Sometimes life doesn't shout its pain. Sometimes it whispers in quiet moments, in silent tears, in memories that never fade. Shanta, 72, sat by the window of her small, sunlit room, staring at the garden outside. The roses she once tended with love were still blooming, but she felt nothing, no joy, no warmth, only silence, a silence so deep it pressed against her chest, reminding her of every person she had lost, every dream she had abandoned, and every moment she had spent waiting for life to be kind. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the old, faded photograph of her family. Her eyes, though weary, held stories that no one had asked to hear. And in that quiet morning, as the first rays of sun kissed her wrinkled face, Shanta realized, sometimes tears are loudest when no one is watching. Shanta wasn't always this silent. Once, she had a home filled with laughter, her children running across the rooms, her husband humming old songs, and neighbors stopping by just to hear her warm voice. She remembered the garden she had planted in her 20s, right after her marriage. Every flower had a story. The marigolds her husband loved, the jasmine she picked for herself, and the roses they had planted together, each one a memory, a promise, a hope. But time had a way of taking everything away. Her children had moved far, chasing careers and families of their own. Her husband had passed away 10 years ago, leaving behind a silence that echoed through every corner of the house. And the neighbors? Most had left, and those who remained rarely cared to check on the old lady next door. Shanta would walk through the garden every morning, feeling the soft soil beneath her hands, whispering names that belonged to ghosts of her past. Each petal reminded her of laughter that would never return. Each fallen leaf mirrored her own fragility. The kitchen was Shanta's favorite place once. The smell of freshly baked bread, the sizzle of vegetables in the pan, and the warmth of the morning sun made it a sanctuary. Now the kitchen was empty. Meals were eaten alone, often cold, with her hands shaking as she stirred her tea. Sometimes she spoke aloud, to her late husband, to her children, to herself, but no reply ever came. One evening, she remembered the first time she had baked a cake for her daughter's birthday. Her daughter's smile had lit up the room like sunlight after rain. That memory was vivid, yet it tore through her heart with sharp edges, reminding her how far life had moved away from those moments. Shanta sighed and placed her hand on the old, chipped table. The table had seen decades of joy, pain, celebrations, and tears, and now it was just a silent witness to her loneliness. In her small room, a simple landline phone sat on a shelf. Every day, Shantae hoped it would ring. A call from her children, a friend, anyone. But the phone remained silent. She picked it up, dialed numbers she knew by heart, but often hung up before they answered. There was a fear of being an inconvenience. She didn't want to trouble anyone with her age, her worries, her fading health. Yet, deep down, she longed for a voice, a word, even a simple, "Hello, Ma." She wanted to be remembered, to be seen, to be needed. But the silence was heavier than the heaviest stone. Sometimes she would imagine conversations, long, imaginary talks with her children, her husband, or even a stranger. She would laugh quietly, shed silent tears, and then returned to the emptiness of her room. One afternoon, while cleaning her drawer, Shanta discovered old letters from her husband, written decades ago, yellowed with age. She sat cross-legged on the floor, reading every word, every comma, every "I love you." Tears streamed down her face. She hadn't cried like this in years. Every letter reminded her of the life she had once lived, a life full of warmth, hope, and laughter. She realized then that life is fragile. People leave, circumstances change, and time moves forward relentlessly. But memories remain. They live in photographs, letters, flowers, and silent rooms. And in that moment, Shanta understood. Her tears were not weakness. They were proof that she had lived, loved, and lost. Shanta rarely went out now, but one day she walked to the local market. Her steps were slow, her back bent with years of hardship. As she picked vegetables, a young girl smiled at her. "Good morning, Auntie," the girl said warmly. For a moment, Shanta's heart leapt. The simple act of recognition, a kind word, made her feel alive again. She smiled back, her teeth showing gaps and age. They struck up a conversation. The girl's name was Anika. She visited Shanta every week after that. They shared stories. Anika spoke of her school, dreams, and friends, while Shanta shared memories of her own childhood, her husband, and her children. For the first time in years, Shanta felt connected, not just to the past, but to the present. Days turned into months. Anika's visits became the highlight of Shanta's week. Yet, even in joy, there was a bittersweet truth. She could not reclaim the past. She could not bring back her husband or her children's childhoods. But she could live now, even in small moments. A smile from a stranger, the fragrance of roses, the warmth of sunlight on her hands. Shanta started writing again, letters to her children, stories for Anika, notes for herself. She realized that life, even when lonely, had meaning. Even tears, when silent, told stories of strength, love, and survival. One evening, Shanta sat by the window, the sun setting behind the garden. She watched the roses sway in the gentle wind. She thought of her past, her laughter, her tears, her losses, and smiled softly. Life had not been kind. It had been harsh, lonely, and filled with silent suffering. But it had also been hers. Every tear she had shed, every memory she had cherished, every quiet smile she had given. It was proof that she had lived fully. And as night fell, Shanta whispered to herself, "I am still here. I am still alive. And that is enough."